So what's up, everybody? We're at another episode of The Policy Plug. This is the space where we humanize the people who influence policy, and we bring the policy to the people. So we're here at the Democratic National Convention. This is a big time, a historic moment. We have a first African American and or first Black and first Southeast Asian woman who's at the top of a ticket of the Democratic Party. And there's a lot of energy and a lot of buzz. And so we thought that we would bring you all here in this space because, as you know, policy is the paramount space. It's the space where it touches every aspect of life. And so we thought we'd bring you to no other place than Chicago. But I have distinguished guests, as you always know, and we try to introduce new faces and faces you may know to bring things to life. I am joined by none other than Congressman Tim Kennedy.
Hey.
Absolutely.
How you doing?
So our audience is always looking to understand the policymakers and the way that they influence life. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm really honored. You know, I've heard about your podcast and the, tremendous impact that you have in the world of politics across the nation. So to join you here, especially in this venue, on this day, the first day of our convention.
Yep.
I mean, it's really cool. So I appreciate you thinking of me and bringing
Absolutely.
me in. So it's just over 100 days for me. I got elected at the end of April.
Okay, so we're 3 months in.
That's right.
We're 3 months in.
I was sworn in on the floor of the House on May 6th.
Okay.
And we've hit the ground running. We've got so much work to do. I tell folks it's the same work we've been doing in the community, just on another level.
Yeah.
I was in the New York State Senate for 14 years, 8 years in the minority, 6 years in the majority. When we won the majority back in 2018 in the New York State Senate, it was the first time Democrats won the majority in the Senate in New York in 10 years.
Okay.
And it was only the second time in a century. Do you believe that or not? It's Republicans have had a stranglehold on our New York State Senate for the better part of the last century. And the first thing we did when we won that majority is we put in transformational leadership. Andrea Stewart-Cousins, first woman.
Right.
And first woman of color.
Right.
To lead the Senate majority or to lead either house or either party in the 242-year history at the time of New York State. Now it's 6 years later. She's still the leader. We had a supermajority. We were able to transform the laws in the state of New York for the better to make it more focus on the people of the great state of New York.
Yeah.
And it's a track record that I now bring to Congress because you think of the parallels when we're looking to your point already that you mentioned. We're going to have the first Black president of the United States, first woman of color.
Right.
In the history of the United States, now 248 years.
Right.
And then at the same time, we're going to win Congress this November. I'm speaking it into existence.
Okay.
And we're going to make Hakeem Jeffries, fellow New Yorker, by the way, first Black Speaker of the House in United States history.
Yeah.
So we're going to make history this year, but it's what we do with it. And I think the track record that we've demonstrated in governing in the state of New York are a lot of the things that we're going to be bringing to the federal level. Not everything, but you know what? A lot of things that we've done as it pertains to human rights and women's rights and labor rights and civil rights and focused on people all across the great state of New York and the diversity and really the what we believe the greatness of the Empire State. I'm bringing to Washington.
The Big Apple, as they call it.
We're bringing that energy. Well, that's New York City.
New York City,
I'm from Buffalo, baby.
Got you.
The Queen City.
That's right.
Buffalo, Niagara Falls. That's my district out in Western New York. But you know what? We work very closely. And at the end of the day, when I have that track record in government, and before that, 6 years in the Erie County Legislature in Western New York, and before that, and where I got my career started in government to begin with, in college, I studied and became an occupational therapist. So I come from healthcare.
You know what? I can't think of too many members of Congress that have that background.
No, I'm the only member, I'm the highest ranking public official in the country who's an occupational therapist.
How does that feel? Let me ask you that. How does that feel?
It's cool, but it's what you do with it, right? And I always tell people say, how does an occupational therapist become a member of Congress?
That's right.
There's so many parallels between healthcare and public service. At the end of the day, the base route, it's about helping people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And whether you're helping people in their recovery from an illness or some surgery or a heart attack or a stroke or something like that as an occupational therapist, or kids coming up where I work with kids.
Yeah.
Or it's being in government and you're helping people with their daily lives and helping them to achieve the American dream, or helping them in the community to get resources that they deserve as Americans. Again, parallels are countless.
Yeah.
It's also where I met my wife, who's a physical therapist. That's the most important thing. We have 3 wonderful kids, boy, girl, boy, 19, 15, soon to be 16-year-old daughter, and Cream in the middle, by the way, our daughter. And then our youngest son, Patrick, is 13. So
you're all the
3
teens.
teenagers.
We're in the teens.
Right. That's right. So, being a father and the lessons that I've got to deal with at home, and having a wife who's just extraordinary, and taking care of our kids when I'm away, taking care of business and government and everything else. Always thinking about families and the impact of our work on the families across our country, and how we can make our country a more perfect union. And at the end of the day, on November 5th of this year, we're going to do that when we elect these historic figures to lead our country. And I'm so proud to be a part of this change.
Yeah.
And excited to take back the House and to make our vice president the first woman president.
Absolutely. So let me ask you, before we delve into your committee assignments and the work that you're passionate about, here we always try to connect our audience to the fact that policy touches every aspect of life.
Yes.
And before you were in Congress, there was a shooting in Buffalo.
Sure.
It made the news. It was devastating. And I wonder if you could take me in, as you are an occupational therapist, and just even, it's kind of in some ways related tangentially to, the psychology and the therapy that is needed to even, in a mentality, make it through. Putting on your congressional lens now and merging the two together, how did you feel at that moment and see that moment?
Well, first of all, that was a horrific, disgusting, and despicable act of racist, white supremacy violence, that the underbelly of our country that visited our great city of Buffalo. And it wasn't just an attack on the great people of Buffalo, it was an attack on Black America.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no place for that hate, that sick and disgusting and vile violence anywhere. And it's one of those moments that is a defining point in my life and in the life of all of us in Western New York.
Yeah.
And I believe one of those further defining moments in our country's history. And I was personally impacted because somebody who I consider family, very close to me, staff member of mine, Zanetta Everhart, now councilwoman in the city of Buffalo.
Okay.
My head of diversity and inclusion, her son Zaire Goodman was working that day at Tops Friendly Markets on Jefferson and was shot through the neck. He was the lone Black survivor.
Wow.
10 beautiful souls were stolen from us that day.
Yeah.
3 individuals, including Zaire, were injured. And what we did as a community is we rose up and we said, we are not going to allow this white supremacist racist to define our city. We are going to show him and the world that we are all better than that.
Yeah.
And so we immediately began to show that love always conquers hate. We came together as a community. All ethnicities rose up and said, not in our community, not in our country, not now, not ever.
That's powerful.
And we rallied together and continue to rally with the families that were impacted leading the charge. And from that moment forward, I was away with my family at that moment. And I immediately, when I got the call from Zanetta, I drove back to Buffalo. I drove 5.5 hours back to Buffalo. and was with the families of the victims that evening and into the next day, that Sunday. It was a Saturday afternoon, 2 p.m. Beautiful, blue sky, perfect early afternoon on a weekend. And the reason that this despicable human being came to Buffalo was because he knew that Tops Friendly Markets on Jefferson
Right.
was where the black community came to shop. And
Right.
he came to do as much destruction
Right.
in our community. And again, we rose up. I'm so proud to have stood with the families in that moment and in the following weeks as they came to Washington, D.C. Again, at the time, myself, a senator, standing with these families and with Zanetta as she testified before Congress. And they drove the message home to our leaders in Washington, along with the families from that horrific massacre in Uvalde, Texas, and said, enough is enough.
Yeah.
We're better than this. And made changes in the law in our country that made our streets safer and enacted the gun safety legislation.
Yep.
That's the law of the land today. It was the first legislation that was passed before Congress in 30 years. And we've got so much more work to do.
Yeah.
You know, the idea that we still have assault weapons that are pervasive throughout our streets, that we still now, according to the Supreme Court of the United States, allow bump stocks to be legalized.
Yeah.
That we allow for the purchase of these firearms without so much as a background check.
Right.
I mean, it's just absurd. It's not right, and we are not only deserving of better from our government, but we're going to get better from our government when we win back the House and we're able to enact true gun safety legislation that'll make our streets safer across our country, because we should not have a normalcy of shootings, the violence in our streets,
Yep.
in our churches, in our synagogues, in our schools, in our supermarkets.
Right. Right.
And we are much better than that as a country, and the time is now to make a difference.
Yeah. Last question.
Yeah.
With minute I have left. You say, and you all are pushing to win back the House, right?
Yes, yes.
And if you all win back the House, you now become in the majority. You are currently, you have membership on the Homeland Security
Yes.
and Veteran Affairs
Yes,
Committee.
yes.
In the 119th Congress, what is a pressing issue that you think that you want to see carry over the finish line in the 119th Congress?
Well, first of all, I want to thank all of our veterans. As a member of the Veterans Affairs Committee and as the son and the grandson of a United States military veteran, and as the brother of a U.S. Border Patrolman today, I'm so proud of all of those individuals, men and women that don the uniform to protect our country and serve our country, and the families. So we've got to lift up our veterans. We've got to make sure that we're providing for our veterans and their families, giving them the resources that they deserve, that they've earned.
Yeah.
And I believe that we as a country need to continue to focus on providing for our veterans at the same time, Homeland Security, making sure that not only are our borders secure, but that we allow for commerce to continue to flow with partners like our greatest ally, Canada, to the north, as I'm on the northern border, and
Right.
Northern Border Caucus, and billions of dollars that comes over, and making sure that we're keeping our alliances at the same time we're protecting and securing our borders.
That's right. Well, I want to thank you definitely for
Yeah.
your time, Congressman. And you all have heard it here. You know, you can hear the excitement, you can hear the joy, the passion. We've talked about everything from gun violence prevention to the need to protect our veterans and make sure that there's even economic security and
That's right.
bilateral ties across countries. So again, thank you for your time.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Always great to be with you.